Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is Very Useful Engine, and today I'm going to make a guide on the Snake Claws. The Snake Claws are a brand new weapon in the Fatal Falls DLC, and they are Brutality/Tactics. When you attack with them, they teleport you to the nearest enemy and poison them, inflicting critical hits on a target with 5 or more stacks of poison. To me, it feels like a mix of Hayabusa Gauntlets and Meat Skewer, because it gives you movement options and it becomes stronger the longer you attack with it. Before we begin, I just want to say I am planning on making this weapon guide a weekly series, so if that interests you, then do subscribe, and like the video if you enjoy. So with that all out of the way, here are some of the best tips, tricks, and builds to help you win with the Snake Fangs. If you need to know where they come from, they drop from the Cold-Blooded Guardians and the Fractured Shrines, which are the big snake cultist guys. It's a 1.7% chance, so you might be able to get it without a Hunter's Grenade if you go to the biome a few times, but if you're looking to use it right away and you already have the lantern, then you might want to use a Hunter's Grenade for it. As far as the strengths of the weapon are concerned, I think there's actually quite a lot of them because it's a pretty good weapon. It's great on multiple enemies because of the way poison works. It has pretty good crit damage, it handles flying enemies for you, it gives you some dodging and some speed, and it's a really good offhand option. In terms of weaknesses, I'd just say it's risky to teleport directly in front of an enemy, and the base damage isn't all that great, but all that really means is that you're going to have to base your build around this weapon if you want to use it as your main hand, so honestly I don't think it's really that bad. In terms of strategy, really you just want to get a little bit of practice with it, because to use it properly it is a little bit difficult at first. It has a little bit of a range to it, and if you're outside of that range, you'll just swing at nothing instead of teleporting. It also teleports front to back, so there's strategy to using it for dodging, like I mentioned earlier. You can run away from attacks and then use it to teleport back onto an enemy, or you can also teleport away from an enemy that you're currently attacking by turning towards a different enemy. It's kind of reminiscent of Meat Skewer in the fact that the more you use it, the better you'll be at using it to dodge attacks. Also, don't teleport directly onto a Thorny. I thought it had iframes when I first used it, but it definitely does not. And I definitely took a little bit of damage by doing that, so yeah, don't do that. Now let's get to the exciting part, which is builds. In terms of builds, there's two main ways you want to use the Snake Fangs. You either want to use it as your main weapon, with the rest of your build giving you either poison sources or some better damage, or you want to use it as an offhand so that you can teleport to an enemy and give them a poison dot. Maybe even slow them down or give them a bleeding dot as well using certain brutality mutations. So yeah, like I said, the biggest weaknesses of the weapon are that it's dangerous to teleport onto enemies and it has a lack of base damage. So when you're using it as your main weapon, there are some pretty good options to make it safer for you to use. You can either take Crow's Foot in Tactics, or you could take Melee in Brutality, which is kind of like automatic for me whenever I use this weapon. I'll take either of those just because the slowdown is really helpful, unless of course I'm using Ice Shards, but that's a whole different story. Another very helpful mutation with this weapon is Predator. It's kind of the same idea of making it safer to use, and it also pairs super nicely with Melee mutation. To compensate for the lack of base damage, in Brutality you have mutations like Initiative, Combo, and Scheme, and Tactics. I think Support is definitely the best option just because that's one of the few Tactics mutations that still works with melee weapons. There is also Acrobat Pack, because you'll most likely be using a ranged weapon along with your build, and that'll also give you a lot more damage if you use it with like a Hokuto's Bow or an Alchemic Carbine, for example. So with mutations out of the way, let's talk about the weapons that work well with it, and it depends on what context you're using it. Like I said, there's two main ways. So if you're using it as your main hand weapon, it's pretty much the same as any Brutality weapon right now. You're either going to want to run a dual bind, throwing knife, or firebrands, or you can just run a shield with it. That's really all there is to it. And in terms of stuff it works well as the offhand for, obviously in this clip where I'm getting destroyed right now, you see me using Sadist Stiletto, just because it teleports you to them and poisons the target. That works very well because it gives you Sadist Stiletto crits, obviously. Then you have the Infantry Bow, and that'll get you into range to shoot off a crit with the Infantry Bow every single time. And it also works with mutations such as Melee and Open Wounds for more bonus damage synergy potential. I also compared this weapon to Meat Skewer in the beginning, and I think it actually works quite well with it just because you have so much movement. It kind of reminds me of like old tactics builds you used to be able to do with the meat skewer, like combining it with the war javelin. It just gives you a lot of movement potential and it's quite fun to use. Lastly, I also think it works super well with the Swift Sword because it lets you go fast just by teleporting onto enemies, and it also poisons them, of course, which will give you bonus to poison targets with the Swift Sword, and that way you could just clear out biomes super effectively. And those are just some of the best examples, of course. You really can just use it with any weapon you really wanted to. It is just a super solid offhand option because it works with a lot of mutations and it gives you teleportation and poison, so I think it fits into a lot of builds, honestly. Now for tactics, you saw me using it a little bit earlier in this video, and that's the Alchemic Carbine. It gives you a lot of poison dots and big poison clouds, which will really help you get your crits. You can use it in the offhand, or you can use it with Acrobat Pack, and it'll just really help you get those crits and biomes. Similarly, because it poisons the enemy every single time, you can also use it with a Hokuto's bow and get a lot of damage that way. And it definitely does a very good job of making up for the lack of base damage that it tends to struggle with. And the last one you want to definitely look at is the ice shards, because those will slow down enemies for you. It'll make it very easy to just teleport onto them and keep hitting them. So that's kind of like the bread and butter, the holy trinity of the 3 items you want to use most of the time. You use the snake claws and tactics because they all help out with the flaws of the weapon a lot, and they're all very good options in and of themselves. Apart from that, I also think it works quite well with knockback type weapons, such as like the knockback shield, the war javelin, or even the Spartan sandals, just because you get to keep all the benefits of knockback, like being able to kick enemies off of ledges and that kind of thing, or into walls, but you don't actually have the drawback of kicking them away from you as you're trying to hit at them, just because you're able to instantly teleport back onto them and keep on doing damage. So knockback items are actually pretty good with this. In terms of offhand, I don't think it's as good of an offhand weapon in tactics, just because stronger options like war javelin and alchemic carbine exist, and you also don't get to make use of as many mutations unlike brutality, but it does still work quite well with close range weapons such as infantry bow, like I mentioned earlier, or even the E-whip, because the teleportation and poison obviously is still very good. And something like blowgun, for instance, the teleportation is also helpful along. So it's not the best offhand option in tactics, but you can get it to work in certain situations. Now for skills, I'm not going to go over every single one that works with the snake fangs because A, there's a lot of skills in this game that are really good, and B, because there's nothing really specific that you have to run with this weapon in order to make it better. There's just a few I think are quite good. So first up, you can run turrets with the Toxic Cloud affix to help you get more poison on your enemy and help you get more crits. That's quite helpful. There's also the Magnetic Grenade I think is really good, because like I said, this weapon is quite good on groups. So having the Magnetic Grenade to do more damage over time and group up your enemies makes the weapon a lot easier to use. Then there's the new skill, which is Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod actually, it benefits from you moving fast while using it, because that way you can cover a much bigger area. And of course you're moving fast when you use the snake fangs because you're teleporting from enemy to enemy. Cocoon as well, because chances are you're not using a shield with this in tactics anyways. So being able to parry on demand definitely has its uses. Then Ice Armor. Ice Armor goes back to that whole element of being safer while you use the weapon, just by not teleporting directly into an enemy's face and getting hit by an attack. It's just a fantastic skill in general, no matter what color you're running, but I think it also has kind of a special application with these snake fangs. Corrupted Power. That goes back to the other element I mentioned of it having low base damage, and Corrupted Power definitely helps with that a lot. And because you're running things that make the weapon safer to use, the drawback of Corrupted Power being that you take more damage if you get hit doesn't really come into play very often, so I think that's quite a good one. Another new skill, the Sickles, I think are quite good, just because they are, I don't know, like, they seem like a very good skill because you get a lot of cooldown reduction. I haven't tested them out a whole ton, admittedly, but the times I have used them in tactics and survival, they have worked quite well, so I don't doubt that that could work well. For Brutality, another new skill is Serenade. Maybe I'm just using these too much because they're new, but I do think the Serenade works well with weapons that give you movement, like the Meat Skewer and the Snake Fangs, because you can bounce between enemies and then keep marking them up as your sword flies around them. Then you just switch to your sword and kill them with the crits. Plus it poisons the enemies for you when you use the Snake Fangs. So I think it's a pretty good pairing. Then the Owl, which is what I'm using right now, of course. The Owl is just a really good tactics skill basically all the time. But especially with this one where you might be struggling to get some damage going. The Owl is very helpful in that regard, and you can get a bonus to poison affix on the Owl and it will just do tons and tons of damage even when it's not activated. Lastly, I also mentioned Wave of Denial. Or I didn't mention Wave of Denial, I mentioned knockback weapons being very good, but the same is true with Wave of Denial. It's a 10 out of 10 skill for sure, and it works even with melee weapons, but especially with a melee weapon that lets you teleport onto an enemy after knocking them back. Now for more Brutality, because I've mostly been talking about tactics skills so far. One excellent one is Lacerating Aura, because basically by definition anytime you're using Snake Fangs, you'll be getting the effects of Lacerating Aura just because you teleport onto enemies, and that way you're always in range to be damaging them with the aura, and you also get great affixes from it as well. Knife Dance, similarly to Lacerating Aura, very much benefits from you being right on top of an enemy, and that's another great option because it gives you burst damage. Phaser and Grappling Hook are also great for pretty much the same reason because, like I said, you suffer from a lack of base damage when using this weapon, so that way anytime you think you might be in a bit of trouble in terms of damage, you can hook an enemy in or teleport behind them, and you'll get a huge either damage or percentage base buff to your attack. Keep in mind, like I mentioned, there's definitely a lot of skills that could work well with this. Those are just some of the best examples and like the new skills that got added into the game that I wanted to kind of explain how they could work with the Snake Fangs. So now that you may have a build in mind, you might be wondering where you should actually take this build, and the answer is like you're seeing in these clips, it works very well in biomes where there's groups of enemies. So I was in Graveyard earlier, and now I'm in Sepulcher, and there's just lots of enemies around, so they transfer the poison to each other, and that way I can do crits, and it's a lot more effective that way. Plus, tactics builds in general, if you are using it in tactics, are just better in those types of biomes. And for bosses, I think your best bet is Conjunctivius. In this run, I actually fought the Momatic, and it was quite hard just because I wasn't able to teleport in front of her while she was doing an attack, because she swipes down with her little fang things, I guess you would say, or her claws. And yeah, I was just kind of sitting back waiting for her to be done attacking so that I could use the snake fangs on her. So I don't recommend going Momatic. I think Conjunctivius is the way to go, since while Concierge is also a decent option because he's easy, I think Conjunctivius is actually pretty easy with Snake Fangs builds because you have teleportation, pretty good damage against bosses, which is one of the strong suits of this weapon, and you have damage over time and slowdown, which is very useful in the tentacle phases. So I don't think you'll struggle too much with Conjunctivius in this build, and that way you can get the most scroll fragments if you are on 3, 4, or 5 BC. Then for your second boss, my biggest recommendation is Giant. The reason I wouldn't recommend either Timekeeper or Scarecrow is that I accidentally went to the Timekeeper in this run you're seeing right now, and it was a bit of a struggle just because of her quick moves and the stuff flying around, and it was a big arena, so it was hard to teleport to her just because it has a little bit of a maximum range to it. And I'm assuming it's not very good against Scarecrow. I haven't fought the Scarecrow with it, but Scarecrow is kind of just like Timekeeper on cocaine anyways, so I doubt it's very good against that fight. You can go fact check that if you want, but I would try and avoid it if I were you. So yeah, go Giant for the second boss is my biggest tip. For Hand of the King, obviously he isn't optional. Even if you're on 5 BC, you gotta go beat him and then go to the next biome. So I did want to mention one thing to definitely look out for in that fight is that the claws don't actually teleport you to the flags that he spawns. So yeah, this tactics run in the background, it was going fairly well. I did mess up by not being able to afford a health pot refill, and I also, of course, accidentally went to timekeeper like I said, so I took a little bit of damage and then made a couple mistakes in High Peak Castle. So yeah, I went into this fight on low health, but as you can see, I just keep trying to teleport towards those flags to evade attacks, and it does not work at all. So don't do that. I was feeling a little cocky trying to like maneuver around him using the snake claws, and it doesn't teleport you to the flags. So look out for that because you don't want to lose your run instantly. So that about does it for this guide. Be sure to like if you enjoyed it, or subscribe if you're interested in seeing guides coming out in the future. I will be doing Iron Rod and the Ferryman's Lantern soon. So yeah, subscribe if that interests you, and I'll see you all later. Peace.